Viewers, we have two English language teaching and testing experts with us today. So you are going to hear a very exciting conversation on learning English from a non-native background and becoming a professional in it, and then also looking at the challenges before English and its emergence as a global linked language. You would agree that in the emerging global village, a linked language is very important. As of now, as per the statistics available, there are some 7,000 languages in the world and 100 scripts. And English is, in the hierarchy of languages, the most globally spread language, followed by Spanish, and Arabic is on number 3. However, learning English in various parts of the world is not very easy. We have as I said, two experts now of English language teaching and testing. Let me introduce the first one. She is Yelena from Kazakhstan and lives in Australia. She has done her MA in linguistics from Melbourne University, which is one of the top universities in Australia. We also have with us, it's our pleasure to have with us, Mr. Tarwar. He is from Nigeria and he is an examiner of English. Serving in India at the moment as a freelancer. He got educated in his native town in Nigeria, in a rural school perhaps, and then he has gone on to do his bachelor's in English and master's in linguistics. So we are going to listen to them on the need for a global linked language, and also how they learnt English, what challenges they faced, and finally how they emerged as English professionals. Over to Tarwar and Yelena.
When I was at school, we started learning English from grade 5. And actually I haven't learned English at school. I learned myself after I finished school at 17 years old. And the need for me to learn English was just, out of personal inclination. I wanted to learn language, and I found that my passion at that young age for languages is growing. And I was learning German at school, not English, from grade 5. So we had 3 languages, French, German, and English, and I was sent to German by one. Basically, I started my journey language myself, it's not at school, so I don't know if I can say much about how it was taught in school actually, but I can explain where it led me when I started learning English myself, and my journey continues until now. Thank you. Do you want to talk about your experience?
Yes. For me, the study of English in school is compulsory. To answer your question most directly, it's compulsory. It's not just necessary. Mm-hmm. It's compulsory for any child that goes to school, beginning from creche through secondary school to tertiary institution. The language of instruction is English. At that tender age, you really don't know what you're doing, but the curriculum says that you should study English for maybe future benefits, like being a global language, which is one of the things we'll be talking about today. So I really didn't know the importance of studying English language at that age, but because the curriculum said so, I had to study your English language in my own case. And I think at the moment I'm beginning to harvest the benefits of what happened to me at that age. So basically, it posed on me and other pupils at that age who were made to study English without really knowing whether it was going to be beneficial or not.
So I guess we were just also in cross language, but we were just much later. So nowadays in my country where I come from, in Kazakhstan, if someone wants to teach their children language, they can do it in creche, or you can do it in kinder. So it's not compulsory, it's pretty much voluntary. We don't know what benefits it might bring, but we just think about language as as a tool of opening doors.
I
can see the difference. apparently Kazakhstan is a very different country from, so it's in Central Asia, and it bears quite a big difference from, let's say, African countries, African continent. It hasn't been colonized, and so education continues now. Language education continues to be on a voluntary basis. The school system has this as compulsory subject, as a part of the curriculum. So you're free to choose what language you learn. It might be, I'm not sure about these days because I don't live there anymore, but it used to be French, English, and German, and a big proportion of people were studying German for some reason. Not many people are studying English, I remember that, and the rest of us studying French. So it's quite a big difference, I guess country to country, depends on the circumstances and cultural environment, and
That's true. In my case, so when I grew up, I became interested in this study and teaching of English language, but this was a later goal, and this goal was born from the experience that I had learning English at a later age when I started attending secondary school.
Yeah.
Then teachers were inadequate. English teachers were inadequate, and so even those that were there to teach were not really qualified and did not use the requisite techniques or the acceptable techniques that were important in the study of any foreign language, not just English. So the study of English language for us was a nightmare at some point. It was really difficult for you to get around, the technicalities, to get to know what was expected of you in grammar and other aspects, like intonation, stress, pronunciation, and the rest. So when I grew up, I actually wanted to study mass communication. My ambition was to work for BBC as a broadcaster. So when I went to the university, there was no admission for me in that department, and someone helped me to get admission to study linguistics, and that's how I became a linguist. When I graduated, in the course of studying linguistics, I became so much interested.
It was there in the country?
In Nigeria, yes. I became interested in the components of English, and I saw it as an opportunity to remedy the teaching situation in most of the schools in my country after graduation.
Great goal. I had a little bit different ambition. Like I mentioned before, I started at 17 years old, studying English seriously. So I found this really old book. It was called English in 2 Years. It was really battered. I think it was published in the 1960s, but it was, by the time it got into my hands, it looked like it was 100 years old. So I started learning English myself. I had a teacher who...
It's interesting listening to your experience
Thank
of
you.
learning English.
Me too.
And you've told me that English has actually opened doors for you. Could you tell me more about that, and what types of door has English opened for you, and where are you now?
Okay, I can tell you that. So like I was saying before, it was a big picture in front of my eyes that I know the language and I go anywhere in the world, and English for me was the way to travel and see other places. And I remember at that time when I was learning English, I was applying to volunteer in Cambodia. I didn't have any idea what I'll be doing there, where I might end up with that volunteering. All I knew that I want to travel, and the quickest way to go and travel probably is to work for free in some other country that speaks English. And so Cambodia was on the list. It didn't happen. I tried to apply and send my resume to volunteer work in Cambodia, and I think it just didn't go any further. Instead, I ended up working in Israel as a volunteer for 1.5 years. And again, that helped me to communicate with people from around the world. We were from 80 different countries working in the same place. So for me, it was an amazing experience, just, coming from, I lived in Kazakhstan for 20 something years before I left the country for the first time internationally.
That's your home country.
That's my home country, that's right. So coming to Israel and then it's meeting people from all around the world, and we all spoke one language, which was English. That was a language of communication. Cultures were so different, everyone was different, food was different, traditions, dancing, everything was different, but we all spoke one language and we understood each other, and it was amazing. So that was one of the doors that was opened for me. I wanted to live far away. I don't know why. I had this picture in my mind that I wanted to live somewhere really far away. And you know where I ended up? I ended up in the most remote country in the world, Australia. So I'm living there now. And that was also an amazing experience.
Well, that's still interesting. I think English has a way of opening doors to the world. I also had the same goal when I was, studying at the university. As I said earlier, I wanted to work for the BBC or CNN or one of these international media organizations. That changed when I graduated from the university. I saw the opportunities in the teaching of English language, and I thought that was more rewarding than working as a broadcaster or as a newscaster, because you work with lives, you work with people's future. You have to mold people to become better persons in their immediate societies, environments, and to contribute. I mean, of course, to contribute their quota in building the world and making themselves better persons. So I think I've also become interested in even taking my teaching of English to a global level. As you can see, we're here in India, and what brought me here, of course, was English language, something to do with English language. So I agree with you that there are a lot of opportunities, and there is no limitation to what you can actually do with the study of English language, as we can see. I think in the future there will be more opportunities that we are not seeing at the moment that will help change the concepts of English language teaching. And I look forward to it.
Yeah, I guess we have to do some work now to achieve that. What are you doing at the moment? Where did it take you?
I work as a language consultant for one of the international non-governmental organizations. That's basically what I do, and that was what brought me here.
You enjoying what you're doing?
I do enjoy it. I think it has given me a lot of opportunities. I've interacted with teachers of English from other backgrounds here in India, and I'm still meeting other people who are into language teaching, not necessarily English, but who teach other languages, and I think I have a lot to learn from them. And I think this is going to continue. There are a lot of prospects.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, we were born in different countries. We come from totally different backgrounds.
That's true.
And we in third country and talking about English as an universal language.
Let's talk a little bit about English language teaching in my country. Maybe you tell me about your experience in your country as well when I've finished. It is compulsory for all pupils and students to study English in Nigeria, and the language of instruction is English language. So English is taught in English. There are stringent rules about the study of English language in Nigeria, and if you don't pass English at a certain credit level, which is one of the grading systems in my country, you won't get admission to study at any university, and for us that's very important. So students who study English at secondary school take their studies seriously, and for teachers it is also a challenging task, because they have to be up and doing to make sure that their students pass, because it is also used as an assessment criteria for their employers use it as an assessment yardstick
That's
to
crucial
determine
then.
exactly to determine how well they're doing. And so if your students pass English well at their final exams, you're applauded and seen as a hard-working teacher who knows the nitty-gritties of English language teaching. So teachers are up and doing to make sure that they help the learners learn well.
And the teachers are educated. The teachers of English are educated where? I'm talking about your country.
It depends. It depends on where someone got their education, or where they were educated. Some were privileged enough to travel abroad for their tertiary education. Some studied within Nigeria, but there are prerequisites for any English language teacher to be allowed to teach English language. So regardless of where you were educated, you must have the minimum requirements for you to be able to teach. So what about your country?
My country, where I live now, Australia. So I live in Australia now. I lived there for almost 10 years now. I've completed the Bachelor of Arts in Language and Culture Studies, plus Chinese Mandarin as additional language, and that has given me the impetus to study further, to realize that language, I don't want to only learn the language and speak some other language, let's say second or third language. So I completed my Bachelor of Arts in Chinese Mandarin and Language and Culture Studies, and I decided that I don't only want to learn foreign language, second or third language. I also want to know more about language as itself, in mechanics of language. So that brought me to linguistics, applied linguistics. I've then completed my master's in applied linguistics, completely loved it. It was my favorite, part of my life, I guess. 1 year intensive study in the field that I really love and passionate about.
Okay, so I was also going to tell you about the impact of English language on native languages in my country. It has had a negative effect on local languages, actually, because some languages are going into extinction at the moment, because there is so much emphasis on the teaching and study of English language. And in some cases, parents talk to their children in English after school. They, especially those who live in urban areas, the language of communication is English, and they've completely forgotten about their local languages. That is going to have, not going to have, it's already having a negative impact on local language. And I think it's something that needs immediate attention.
I think the same
is this the same case in
similar
your
case,
country?
So I'm not sure how much you know about Australia. Australia was inhabited by British Empire around 100 years ago. So people came to Australia from Britain, and that since then the English language settled in Australia. So Australian community in total had a few hundred languages, and I'm not talking about the dialects. They're actually languages, many of which languages are also become extinct right now. In Australian community, we're talking about Aboriginal community, people who lived there for thousands of years before it was colonized. Now only elderly people, they're called elders, they very respected people in Aboriginal communities. They possess this secret knowledge of language that they pass to some of the younger generation, some people in the younger generation. However, it's still happening that English as the dominating force caused the extinction of those languages. So in my practice as a language coach and linguist right now, I see bilingualism, and another concept is translanguage is a very, very important, and I explain what it means. from my own experience. So bilingualism, I can, from my personal experience in life, I speak 2 different languages. My mother tongue and English is my second language. And what about yourself? You still speak your?
Well, yes, I speak my own native language. As a matter of fact, when I started learning, when I started schooling, when I was about 7 or 8 thereabout, the teaching of my mother tongue was also compulsory. It was taught side by side.
That was good, actually.
English language.
That's
so the sounds in my the sound system in my mother tongue is somewhat similar to the sound system in English language. So that helped me a lot in blending the 2 languages and not having conflict or friction at all in the study of the language. So knowledge of one was an encouragement and a way of helping you to learn the other.
And also
because we were made to learn our mother tongue and sit exams, and it helped me a lot in being proficient. I speak
but also
it very well.
to keep your culture as well, your mother tongue.
It does, yes.
So you can pass it on.
Exactly.
I do the
language
same.
And culture
Language and culture.
identical.
Oh yeah.
Without language, I don't think you have any form of cultural identity. So they're linked together.
Absolutely.
So you have to go.
Some things you can only express in one language, but you cannot express in the other language, like
That's true.
from your mother tongue.
And that is to say that the teaching of English language should not be done at the expense of local languages or mother tongues.
Yeah,
They should
agree
be,
with that. Yeah.
Policymakers in education should make it a priority to teach English and local languages side by side in order to preserve cultural identities.
My view on future of English in this world is that it will continue probably for some time to be dominating and uniting force, language force for people to communicate like we communicate now. Yeah, it's my second language. I will have accent, but understand perfectly well, so I understand you. And even though we're talking about how this language might have caused some other languages to get extinct, it's still in uniting force. It become the language that people use to communicate. Not just communicate, but we're talking about high level, understanding why, so we can build something together. And why do we need that? So maybe we'll avoid some conflicts, and maybe we'll try to build a better world when we speak one language and we understand each other better. That's my view on that. What about yourself?
Well, yes, I agree with you, Yelena, that English has come to stay. It has been there for years, for hundreds of years most probably, and it's going to be there. Introducing a new language to become a global language other than English will be it won't be impossible, but I think it's going to take a lot of effort, negotiations, and deliberate effort from countries and policymakers at the international level to come up with something like that. If eventually English becomes an officially recognized global language, at the moment it is, but of course not officially.
Yes.
I think it would bring more good than harm, because there will be trust, considering that people would understand each other is more easily than it would have been in a situation where people speak different languages. So I think it's happening already. Because we're here and we're communicating in English, there's nothing that is hidden. I understand what you're saying. You understand what I'm saying. So I think that's what is going to continue in the near future. If another language emerges, I wouldn't know, but at the moment I think English is going to continue to be an international language for at least some time in the time in the future.
Thanks
So-
for sharing your views with me.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure
Jelena.
we'll chat more.
Of course.
In
Thank you.
English.
It was nice meeting you.
At the end of this beautiful conversation, let us talk about the conclusions. We have learned that in order to have a unified world, we need a universal auxiliary link language, and that seems to be English at the moment. According to David Crystal, who is a foremost linguist, English would remain in the world for the next 40 years as an important language. However, experiments are being made in inventing a language which could be a linked language like Glossa and Esperanto. As far as English is concerned, we have seen that it has changed hugely, although it was the language of the British to begin with, but now we have 1.8 billion speakers of English in the world, that the population of which is about 7.4 billion, whereas the native speakers are only 400 million or so. And English is changing beyond recognition. There are many problems in English. For instance, the silent letters and the pronunciation of English, which is difficult in different regions to follow, and also the structure of English might need to be simplified, as Bernard Shaw suggested. However, it's a great development that so many people in the world speak an international language, and as we saw, these two experts told us that coming from very diverse backgrounds, they could still talk comfortably to each other, heart to heart, because they knew the global link language, that is English. So I would conclude by saying that for world unity, linguistic unity is very important, and unity of the world is very important for world peace. And we are moving in the right direction. The linguists of the world must come together at a world conclave and decide upon what language could become the official lingua franca, the official global language of the world. The leaders of the world should also think about this important issue, because a lot of money, in fact billions of dollars, are being spent on teaching of English, and as yet we do not know whether it is the official language of the world or not. So viewers, keep watching Nai Duniya, and we will keep bringing you good videos on different subjects, in-depth discussions which would promote learning and understanding in the peoples of the world. Thank you very much.